myself. You have Stephanie, Steve on my calendar. There's Terry and Frank and Jeff and Mark and Julie and Jason and Ken.
That's
Did I hit them
correct.
all?
I think you did. Yes, sir.
Okay, that's good. I think we've got plenty then. All right, maybe we can dispense with that and go to visitors' comments. Do we have anyone? I think Jerry Willie told me he was going to speak today, but is there anyone else who's a visitor today?
We didn't have anyone who signed up to provide comment ahead of time. However, Whitney is out sick today. So I do want to just take a moment and find out, ask if there are any attendees that are here looking to present public comment. If you could raise your hand. And I see Commissioner Willie. Anyone else? Okay, and Michael, if you can hear me, it looks like Mayor Truax is in the attendees. If you could promote him up as well. I am not able to. Okay, so it looks like maybe just Commissioner Willie is looking to speak. Chair Rogers.
Thank you very much. Jerry, do they promote you? They should promote you. I see his hand up. Can you do that?
Yeah, I am trying. I think you can speak now, Commissioner Willie.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I just signed on. I just was given the option to come in as a panelist, so I'll do that. And thank you, Commissioner Rogers, certainly Stephen and Chris for all the work that you've done on this work plan, this MSTIP work plan that has been before the commission and at my request was postponed for a couple of weeks. What my purpose was is that I wanted the WCCC to have one more time to look at this and hear the process and make sure that they had weighed in on this. I value the WCCC, certainly spending several years on it myself as the committee that recommends these kinds of projects and certainly has been integral in the implementation of the MSTIP program. I guess what I would want to say is that the first focus for me is that this is a very successful program for the last 20 plus years. And the focus has always been on major streets. That's the MS of the MSTIP. And so I don't want us to lose the focus that this is all about major streets. And the other part of it is that, as I've been told, is the cities actually own 68% of the assessed value of the funding source of this program. And I think it's very important that we maintain and ensure that the city and the county have a very strong partnership relationship in as where these funds are allocated. The questions have been that we want to make sure that we have equity. And I think equity has more than a couple of definitions, but equity probably is for the allocation across all the areas, the cities and the districts of the county certainly is important, but it's also that making sure that we do touch the historically marginalized communities and make sure that we evaluate all of our areas that are a little bit underserved. And I guess my question when I hear that, my question back is, do we have statistics that show that we have not historically done that? So what is our success rate of reaching out to these particular areas of our county and addressing their major street needs on this? And so I haven't had a response back on that, but sorry, I got a phone call there that jumped in there. But I'd like to hear more of the data of historically, have we done that? I think we've been good at making sure that all the areas of the county have been equally served. And I'm a little bit concerned about the technical work group that has been put in front of all of this. When we start talking about it, and if you read the document, we talk about evaluation metrics to implement the desired outcomes and then review and score the proposed projects. I'm concerned a little bit about that. We're putting together a technical work group that is going to have certainly a different perspective and a different expertise than the WCCC TAC that historically has been charged with that. So please pay attention to the information and certainly the changes that are being recommended. And let's make sure that we continue to have a very successful transportation program in the county. So thank you, and I'll stay tuned.
Thank you, Commissioner. For all of you who may not remember, Jerry was the mayor of Hillsborough and contributed significantly to WCCC over the years, and so it's always good. Stephen, you might send to Commissioner Willie as well as the other members. You have a great chart that overlays those areas where we have said there are needs for folks who have maybe been marginalized, maybe they are in low-income areas, and the map that you shared showed our investments were really mirroring those areas, and so I think you might want to see that again, and as well as the committee members. It was a great depiction of what we've been doing over the years. So anyway, if you could send that out, that would be perfect.
Yeah, and I believe we'll be looking at it as part of our presentation too. So
great. Okay, do you have anyone else there that's asked to be recognized?
I don't see any other raised hands at this time, sir.
All right, well, thanks so much. And we'll, not seeing any, we'll move on to the WCC meeting summary of July. It seems like only yesterday, but it's been a couple of months. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you, Terry.
Second. Keith.
Is that you, Keith? I didn't catch you. Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on those minutes? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Raise your hand, yeah. Any who disapprove? Unanimously passed. Thank you. The next item, item 4, is the MISTIP 23-28 funding allocation process, and that was what the commissioner was speaking about a moment ago. Chris, are you doing that, or Stephen, which of the two of you are presenting?
Yeah, I was just going to do a quick introductory kickoff, and then I'll turn it over to Chris, and I think Aaron Wardell may actually be part of the presentation team as well. So I did want to acknowledge Commissioner Willie's comments. You know, we certainly appreciate the opportunity to come back to the WCCC as a body, because the August meeting had been canceled and because of the time frame we were trying to achieve to get the work plan approved. We offered individual briefings to WCCC members and alternates in the month of August and maybe one in very early September. And we had a very good response. We met with most of the cities, with just a couple of exceptions, I think. And so we got some good feedback that we utilized to help refine the work plan as we went forward. And I want to be clear too that the work plan itself is not a lot of the decisions that we need to make. It's our roadmap for how we get to the process of making decisions that we will need to make. So I just want to be clear about that. I know there's oftentimes a desire to front load a lot of certainty into these kinds of efforts up front, and in some cases we just don't know that yet. And then I think just quickly, I want to maybe speak to one of Commissioner Willie's concerns about equity and past equity. And so I know he's posed the question, and I understand his concern or maybe a frustration that we haven't been able to really provide a good yes or no answer to that question, or a good quantitative answer to that question. What I could say is just that in the past we have not really made intentional efforts to engage with our historically excluded community members and try to bring them into the process earlier than or much at all, quite honestly. And while we have a number of projects that have been constructed in areas that Metro identified as equity areas of concern in the 2018 Regional Transportation Plan mapping exercise, whether a particular project is a benefit or a burden to a community is always oftentimes a mixed bag. There are impacts to projects, there are benefits that come with projects. And again, in the past, we've not really had a deliberative process for how we try to evaluate those different trade-offs. And so that is a new element in the proposed work plan this time around, is to pay more attention to both equitable outreach and then thinking about the way that the projects themselves help potentially to achieve certain equity outcomes. Can we go to the next slide? So again, the purpose of our briefing today, really, we just want to walk through the proposed funding allocation work plan that, again, we met with many of you about either individually or in small groups by city, and identify where we've made potential revisions from any prior discussions that we've had. And then if you have additional comments, and we'd like to go ahead and seek your recommendation for board approval of this work plan. And the board is tentatively scheduled now to adopt the work plan on September 21st. Next slide. So I'll maybe speak to this slide and then I'll turn it over to Chris. So I think this is an important element of our where we are in sort of a larger process about how transportation projects get committed and delivered. And so we all have transportation system plans, or in some cases other specific area plans that have been adopted, perhaps outside of the transportation plan process. So those plans help us to identify as agencies what our goals and objectives are and priorities. And then this MSTIP, this is an example of where we get to the notion that we've done some planning work to help establish priorities, and then we have a certain amount of funding available. And so how do we go about the process of identifying what projects or programs get funded using the different funding sources? So after this funding allocation process, which we anticipate wrapping up about a year from now, then we would start to move some projects into the project design and construction stage. And speaking about timing, the time frame that we've identified for this process is MSTIP 23 through 28, so fiscal year 23 through fiscal year 28. And so what we're looking to do is allocate revenues that we anticipate receiving in that time frame. The actual projects themselves are often delivered sometime after those dates. So for instance, we're currently in the process of MSTIP 3E, and we're, for a variety of reasons, we have a couple of projects that are still MSTIP 3D projects that are just moving into the actual construction phase. So I want to be clear that not all of these projects get delivered in the 23-28 timeframe. This is really an exercise in allocating the revenues we anticipate receiving during that timeframe. And with that, I think I'll go ahead and turn it over to Chris.
Thank you, Stephen. And I just want to share our appreciation, my appreciation as well, for the time that most of you have spent with us to get your comments. And we found your comments and questions extremely helpful as we think about how we describe this. We're probably a little bit too much in the weeds. And so it's helpful to know what is communicating well and what we need to be more clear on. And one of the things we've heard is that it doesn't hurt just to remind people about what the Major Streets Transportation Program is. And again, I think everyone here knows that for those that may be watching, you know, it is a countywide property tax, and we have applied a pay-as-you-go approach. So it's allocated the revenue for the years 23-28 is where we are right now in this cycle. And it's been around since '86 with over 150 projects funded and more than 900 million dedicated. And the funds are allocated in a pretty much a 5-year cycle. And everything comes through the board, through the WCCC, with a project list recommended by WCC with approval by the board for the allocations. So it's just kind of a recap, and then a little bit more on the history. Michael, next slide, is just to remember this started out as a serial levy. It was then reduced and became part of the property tax rate after the changes in state tax rules. And then the county commissioners have consistently continued to dedicate the funding for MSTIP, and it recognized its significance. And again, as Stephen has said, it's for the years allocated in the 5-year funding for the year 2023 and 2028. That doesn't mean all the projects will be constructed in that time, but that's the revenue that we're dedicating. Next slide. So before I turn it over to Aaron to go through the details of these milestones, I just want to remind you that in its simplest form, we're really talking about 4 major milestones. The first one being to confirm the work plan and work on that equity framework and public engagement plan as part of our initial steps. The next milestone is really get to the point where we can initiate the project solicitation project, where we'll be asking each of you to identify your priorities for funding. And to get there, we will be getting more input on the community input on values that we use to define the evaluation criteria and metrics, and define those through the work group that Aaron's going to tell you more about. The third milestone at its simplest form is to really release a prioritized list of projects for public comment. And that will go after we go through evaluating the projects. And we have a time in here set aside to revisit the programmatic elements. As you know, with your recommendation, the board increased the amount of funding for Opportunity Fund in the last cycle, and there could be other tweaks that come up. And then the fourth milestone is pretty simple in terms of seeking the WCC recommendation and then board adoption for both the project list, programmatic elements, changes if any. And then we are also proposing to update the administrative procedures. So just remember, those are the 4 major milestones. There will be many more touch points, and that's what Aaron will walk you through to in terms of the gist of the work plan steps.
Thanks, Chris. My name is Erin Wardell. I'm the Principal Transportation Planner. I'm going to talk about the touch points that we'll have with the WCCC on almost a monthly basis as we go through the MISTIP allocation process. So we are anticipating that next week at the board meeting, the board will approve our work plan that we're sharing today. We'll be sharing back with them the feedback that we hear from you today. Next month, we'll be back to review the public outreach plan and initial equity framework that we'll be developing as we go forward with the project. The board will also be asked to direct staff to begin the engagement around our values and outcomes, and we'll be talking about the different ways that we'll be engaging with the community on those. Towards the end of the year, we'll be back to review the proposed eligibility criteria and evaluation metrics, and we will be reviewing the preliminary revenue forecast for this next allocation. Early next year, we will be ready to release the project solicitation packet. That's the application process for submitting projects. In February, we'll be talking about the programmatic allocations. The current programs are the MISTIP Opportunity Fund, as well as our Intelligent Transportation System and Rural Bridges programs. We'll be talking about those allocations and any proposed changes to them. In April, we'll be ready to begin our big public engagement around the proposed project list and the program allocations. In June, we'll talk about any revisions to the proposed administrative procedures that we'd like to make. And then we're gearing towards an October-September adoption of the full MISTIP program. So we will have a lot to talk about through the next year. And this is a general work plan of how we'll be having those conversations and when we'll be having them. This is, of course, subject to change. As we go forward, we may have more frequent check-ins depending on how things go. Next slide. So I want to talk a little bit more about the proposed decision-making process because we've heard some concerns with the technical work group being in front of the WCCC TAC and how that's going to work. Our idea with forming the technical work group is that the WCCC TAC's agendas are already really full with a number of different items. So we identified early on that we would need to have separate meetings of the TAC in order to review projects. We also identified at that time that sometimes the person who represents a jurisdiction on the TAC is not necessarily the right person to do project evaluation, and it may make sense to bring in another staff person. So when we talk about the technical work group, it really is a subset or a designee of the WCCC TAC members with some augmented technical specialization added as well. So I can tell you right now who the proposed work group members are. We've asked all of the jurisdictions to please identify who that will be. For the city of Tualatin, it'll be Mike McCarthy. For Washington County, it will be Russ Knoble, one of our principal project managers, and Julie Sosnowski, who's a senior transportation planner. We will also have Eva Haas, who's an epidemiologist with County Public Health. Dave Roth will represent the city of Tigard. Andy Varner will represent North Plains. Terry Keys will represent Cornelius. Don Odermont will represent Hillsborough. Jolynn Becker will represent Banks. Rich Blackman will represent Forest Grove. Dave Runyon will represent King City. Bob Galati will represent Sherwood. Zach Weigel will represent Wilsonville. And we haven't heard back yet on designees from the cities of Beaverton, Durham, Gaston. We'd also like to include a representative from Clean Water Services, as well as from Washington County's Department of Housing. And we're waiting to hear who those members will be. So that's the makeup of our technical work group. The idea is that they'll be really digging into evaluation, how to do that, and then scoring projects. But they'll be making recommendations to the full WCCC TAC, who will then make recommendations to the WCCC, who will make recommendations to the Board of Commissioners. So this is how we envision this workflow happening. I want to pause there and just make sure there's no questions before I move on, since I know this has been a big topic of conversation.
Questions? Aaron, I have one quick one. I'm pleased to hear that there's a lot of city representatives. What will be the composition as far as number of city representatives in your mind and number of county representatives?
You know, we're not limiting the membership. And so if a city wants to propose more than one person because they have more than one person who they think should be in the room, we'd be open to that. But we'd envision at least one representative from each city. So the county does have more than one, but we have a couple of different specialties represented there. So that's sort of the way it's going to shake out.
Do you have a number in mind?
No, we don't have a specific target number.
How many city representatives and how many county representatives on that committee?
As of right now, we have each city represented except for Beaverton, Durham, and Gaston, and we expect they will have representatives there. So there will be 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 from cities, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 county staff plus Clean Water Services.
Thank you.
Okay, next slide, please. And I know we're running a little bit short on time, so I want to make sure we get through this. We have a big agenda today. We are proposing expanded public outreach from what we've done previously. We will be consulting with a contractor to ensure engagement with historically excluded communities is more robust than it has been in the past. There will be 2 community outreach phases. This first phase in the fall will be what do you value in the transportation system? And in the spring, it will be what projects and programs are priorities for you. We would like to work directly with city equity staff and their existing committees so that we're not duplicating work or stepping on anyone's toes. And we'll be doing updates to city councils and other organizations throughout the process as well. Next slide. So I do want to share at a high level some of the feedback that we've heard from the engagement we've done with the board and with the WCCC. First, from the board, we've heard support for this additional engagement for more frequent monthly check-ins, really keeping the focus on major streets. That's something we've heard clearly from the board. Support for the defined project solicitation packet, framing the MISTIP investments around outcomes, expanded technical work group expertise. That means including public health and CWS and some of those other experts in that committee. And then to continue to seek recommendations from the coordinating committee. I want to pause there. Mayor Truax raised his hand.
Thank you. I appreciate the report. I appreciate the information. I'm just wondering if this slide deck can be posted somewhere we can get access to it. I have a council meeting tonight and would like to be able to share some of this information. I have the packet obviously on my iPad, but trying to coordinate the slideshow and the packet is a challenge for this particular mayor. So any help that you can give me, I'd appreciate. Again, thank you for the report.
We'll make sure the slides get posted, and I will be there for your council meeting tonight talking about MISTIP as well as one of the council meetings that we'll be sharing this at.
Oh, well, then never mind.
Next slide, please. The board did ask us to clarify some different components of the program as we go forward and make some revisions, and that is to some support for expanding the Opportunity Fund. It's been a very successful program. The board asked for more information about where we have system gaps and connectivity needs to help inform project prioritization. Wanted us to explicitly include climate impacts and resiliency. The board wanted more information about revenue and project delivery timelines. That's something we'll be working on later this year. The board wanted input on the equity framework and the values before we go out for community engagement, and wanted us to use public input on the priorities. The board also wanted regular updates on the comments we're receiving and staff responses to those. Next slide. So over the last month, we held briefings individually with WCCC members in place of that August meeting, and I wanted to share what we heard from those briefings. They were great conversations. We heard a lot of overall support for the program. People are very pleased with the past successes. We heard support for this increased engagement, for going to city council meetings, for example, for doing equity outreach, talking to chambers of commerce and school districts and other stakeholders. We heard a lot of support for continuing the distribution countywide with that geographic balance that we have used in the past. Support for the expanded technical committee and including those technical experts, and then some additional support for expanding the MISTIP Opportunity Fund. Next slide. We did hear some requests to review the system of countywide interest map and potentially making some changes to that in advance of this cycle, to consider broadening the project categories and prioritize multimodal elements of projects, to consider how equity can be incorporated into the process, and to honor our existing commitments. That means projects that were already prioritized and committed through the MISTIP program, and don't let new projects bump old projects, which has already been addressed as something that we intend to do. Next slide. So common themes: people already have projects and programs in mind that they'd like to support, and we know that our requests will exceed available funding. Unfortunately, there's just not enough money to do everything. Next slide. So our next steps are to seek board approval of the work plan at our meeting next week. We'll be scheduling these regular WCCC and board briefings. We'll be working on developing our public outreach and equity framework. We are entering into negotiations with our consultant for that. We'll be establishing that technical work group and filling in those last remaining gaps there. Sharing the work plan with city councils as scheduled. As I mentioned, I'll be at Forest Grove tonight. We have a number of other city council briefings scheduled over the next month. If we haven't scheduled yet with your city council and you want us to do that, please let us know and we'll get that on the calendar. And then we are gearing up for our fall outreach and to initiate the discussion of our countywide significance map and our evaluation criteria. Next slide. So, opening it up for questions at this time. Are there concerns or questions about the work plan? Are there any changes you'd like us to make? And would you recommend board approval of the work plan at their meeting next week?
There's some hands. There's Mark and Keith, and let's see who else. So however, I don't know who jumped in first, but on my screen it's Mark. So if you jump in, that'd be great. And then Keith.
Sure, and I'll give you the short form because I know we're tight on time. First of all, definitely we'll be supporting the work program. It looks like a good way to factor in one of the things that the city of Beaverton was asking for at the beginning, which is to engage the cities, engage the councils, engage the public in deciding what is the best way to allocate these funds to the projects that are significant. Some of the things that you've already outlined in there that are really important are allowing for the possibility of modifications to the map of roads of significance. We've identified several in Beaverton that really ought to be on that map, and we will be nominating those. The concept of expanding the Opportunity Fund, that was really one of the good additions to the MSTIP program a few cycles back, and we would strongly support increasing the size and the flexibility of that Opportunity Fund. Because, you know, I think the biggest way to describe the way Beaverton has started to look at transportation, and it's reflected a little bit in the letter that we wrote to the board, which is in the packet, is that we see transportation problems as being big problems, not necessarily big street problems. And so our work was to try to encourage the board and WCCC to consider this source of funding as well as other sources of funding as a way to solve big transportation problems, not just big street problems. So that's the tenor of our suggestions, and will continue to be the tenor of our suggestions as we get into project recommendations as well. But as far as this work program goes, this all looks very good. I do appreciate that there's some challenges with identifying how equity works in the world of transportation project planning. But just as one very simple qualitative example, we have Allen Boulevard in Beaverton. It's a significant east-west arterial for the city. It's a 4-lane road. So the question is, do you turn it into a 5-lane road and take out a bunch of low-income or minority businesses? Or do you make it a 3-lane road that functions better and improve the pedestrian environment? Which is the more equitable outcome? Those are the kinds of questions we're trying to grapple with, and I'm sure that the county will have to grapple with as they consider the equity questions in association with this program. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. I'll definitely support this work program.
I think Keith is next.
Thanks, Roy. So am I correct that as the work plan says, we'll consider this or consider that, that we will, as a WCC committee, bring up that topic to revise, but potentially revise the map, potentially revise items that could be included in the countywide assessment of need. So I'm seeing some nodding heads from folks. That's, I'll take that as
yeah. I think in the work plan, I forget which page it is in the printed document, but it was one of the slides Aaron showed, and it sort of shows that process of recommendations working their way through the technical work group to the TAC, to the WCCC, and often to the board. And so
there's multiple buckets
sort of yeah.
Good. So as long as we're doing that with each of these different things, from the map to a change to the establishing of some scoring type thing, the opportunity fund, expanding that is great. As part of what I think we should consider is should that also be distributed throughout the county, so that each of the 4 commissioner districts has access to those. In the last cycle, it was very much a first come, first serve. So consider that in the mix. And happy to see a lot of the different elements to this process, because as it was highlighted, we are lucky as a county to have this resource to be able to put investments in our county. It is not enough money to ever meet the need. So we just need to do it wisely and fairly. And then each individual city, as well as the county, we have other resources available to us, and also not enough to do projects that are of city need or of county need that's not on the county network. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Keith. And I think Steve is next.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Councilor Sansucci. I really appreciated what you said. And as you use the example of Allen, Boulevard in it, and it made me think that what I'd really like to see, and I think it would be beneficial for all of us, is kind of a definition or clarity on what equity in transportation looks like. Because there are so many different variables and things to consider, in terms of, our minority-owned businesses, walking areas, on and on and on. And so if we could see kind of an equity in transportation definition, that gives us all a common understanding that we can process and evaluate things through. And Aaron, I don't know if this is Aaron, Stephen, or a Chris, kind of question, but do we have specific census tracts that we're looking at, that have been kind of identified as equity tracts, which maybe where are marginalized or lower income or whatever again characteristic we want to apply that we're going to be focusing on? Do we know where those census tracts are, throughout the county? Because again, that I know for me, that would help understand, the whole equity issue as we're moving forward. And I think in recognizing time, I'll just stop with those two things. So thank you.
Yep. And just quickly, Mayor Callaway, I think to your question about the sort of equity mapping, yes, definitely. That's an exercise that Erin and her team have already started on, and we'll be continuing to refine that as we get into this process a little bit further too.
Thank you. Yeah, are there others?
Mayor Truax and then
Oh,
Mayor Dalen
thank-
have their hands up now.
I see Pete and Jeff. Yeah. I think Pete, you're first.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to piggyback on Mayor Callaway's comments about the equity issue. I think my gut reaction is that it falls to us as electeds to come up with that transportation equity definition, especially with regard to WCCC and this particular plan, this MISTIP program. It just seems to me that since we are the ones that are answerable to our constituents, then we probably need to play a significant role. That's not to say to ignore TAC or any of the other people in the county or in the cities that are going to be also wrestling with this. But I think the process we're going to have to adjust to is that it does fall to us to really finalize that recommendation onto the county board of commissioners as to what that equity piece will look like. I think the census tracts play a significant role in that. I think the current transportation map and lack of sidewalks and lighting and those things play a significant role in what will drive that particular definition. Thank you for your time. Sorry to take it up.
No, I think it's important, Pete. Thank you. Jeff?
Yeah, I'd take this opportunity to recognize that in the past, the way we've really reached out into our community, and a great partner to that has been Centro, right? We've leveraged our community partnership with Centro to really reach out into our Latino community and to have them funnel that feedback. Roy remembers the days when we brought in, I know it's funny, it's old fashioned, but paper boxes full of letters in support of basically, the curbs, gutter, and sidewalk improvements that took out the ditches of Cornelius as part of these projects, right? Because what our community said is to be able to walk in our community, in our downtown area, our center, is an important thing. Our diversity, our community of all our disabled children throughout the county weighed in heavily on that and said the ability for us to safely have a wheelchair move around the downtown area from one business to another. Those folks weighed in and gave that public testimony, and I was proud to be able to have our staff bring literally paper boxes, the old school paper boxes full of that feedback in and deliver that. And to Mr. Sansuzi's point, right, I think it varies by location, right? And you used a good example there, right? A 3-lane road with a turn in the center and this big streetscape may have a beautiful appearance, but is it at the destruction of affordable housing and ethnic businesses that are in the heart of the community? I think we really have to look at this on a case-by-case basis and look at what are the impacts. What are you benefiting and what are you deterring at each of these projects, right? They really live and die on their own, right? Centro was very happy to donate frontage for the curbs, gutters, and sidewalk project through downtown Cornelius, because they knew how important that was going to be, how much it was going to benefit the downtown community. Virginia Garcia, the same way, right? Several of the businesses in downtown were like, great, this frontage improvement, we've needed this for a long time. So I think we have to look at each one of those projects and understand what it's benefiting and at what cost. And and unfortunately, I don't think there is a one size fits all screen that you can run the projects through, without the cost of really whitewashing out the benefits or costs. So I think we need to take that in consideration. And as always, the cities throughout the area, Adelante, Mujeres, all of them, we've leaned into those groups that we work with on a day-to-day basis as cities to help us provide feedback, to reach out in our communities and pull in the right kind of feedback of what's important. And I have a ton of commuters in my community, and it's important for them to be able to get places safely, to drive there. So that ability to drive and get around is very important when you have 3 and 4 wage earners in a family household. So thanks for listening. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and I would say, Mayor, we definitely will be working with Centro and are being very intentional, I think, about trying to broaden our outreach. And so we'll be relying on existing resources, trying to make sure that we're leveraging them to the extent that we can, and really looking to, like you said, some of the cities that have done some of this kind of work too, just to help us get engaged with the right people in your communities. So,
well, and I don't want it to be like a black eye to you guys. We've always worked with Central. I mean, I've been playing on this committee almost as long as Roy, and they've always been an active partner. We've always encouraged that. They've always been good with us. So I think it's just making sure that we're tapping all those opportunities around the county to provide that kind of quality feedback that are just all members of our community anyways.
yep, absolutely agreed.
Thank you, Jeff. Keith, is your hand back up, or did you?
Yeah, just quickly, to highlight, I support all of those statements comments have been made after I made my last one. There is unique issues on all the roads when you're trying to address how to meet the needs in our county, and there's issues housing related, there's issues employment related, so I think we've done a good job historically, and I think there's more opportunities to continue to focus on that.
Thank you, Keith. And Mark, did you have your hand back up?
Yeah, just a real quick follow-up. I think one of the differences between now and the 80s and the 90s, when the program first started, is that the cities are bigger, the cities are better resourced, and the cities have spent a lot of time getting to know their own communities to a greater degree than was the case 20, 30 years ago. And so I think part of the subtext of our message in the note that we wrote to the board was, the cities really have a really close tie with their community. We understand what it is we need. We understand what it is our communities are hoping for and what their aspirations are. And so this work program is good because it's collaborative, and that's the reason we're going to be strongly supporting it.
Great, thank you. Stephen is sending me a message saying we need to clean this up. I have a couple of 3 points real quickly. One, I'm disappointed that we packed the agenda today and didn't have more time for this item. I think it's important, and that's no slight on what we're going to hear from Lucinda and Garrett on ODOT toll program, but I think this deserved more time. 2, I'm still not convinced personally. I have some concerns, and when Commissioner Willie brought his concerns up, they're very similar to mine. Equity, and I think Mayor Truax said it well, that we need to define it. I don't think the technical group should do all that work, and that's exactly what it says on some of these pages. It says that the key work for the technical committee will be the development of evaluation metrics. I don't know what those metrics are. I need to preface all this by saying there would be no MSTIP, there would be no TDT, there would be no original TIF if it weren't for the cities. The cities have been partners through all of this, and so we need to make certain that their voices are heard, and that this committee, which I won't be a part of it after today, but I think that you clearly need to have a voice in developing the metrics. You clearly need a voice in developing what this equity framework means, because it means a lot of things to different people. And on page 3 of on the natural environment, I have no idea what it means when you say create and maintain a transportation that first avoids and minimize and mitigates impact to the natural environment. I think those are all very nice statements. But again, what does it mean? I was on JPAC for a long time, and I saw that people would bring up an issue, and then they all would be unelected or move on, and then it would be reinterpreted and reinterpreted. So I think our city partners, and I've always called you partners, deserve a greater hand in this than simply to say, you got 15 minutes on the agenda. I hope you didn't like this, and off we go. And we're going to develop all of these definitions later. It's just fine. So I only share this because that's exactly what I'm going to say when it gets to the commission level. I suspect Mayor Willie will be saying similar things, and hope that we flush this all out. So I apologize for speaking a little longer on this, but I think it's important that we recognize that this program is only because of you all, and you all are key partners in this role. You really are. You really need to be heard. More than 15 minutes worth. So I will stop because I'm getting messages we need to stop. I apologize. I think they should have been about a half hour, 45-minute item. So having said that, we will move to the next one, the ODOT toll program. And Garrett, Lucinda,
I'm sorry, Chair. We were hoping to seek a recommendation from the committee today on the MISTIP work plan.
Okay. Pete, Mayor Truax, have you got a recommendation?
Thank you, Chair. I move that we move forward with the MISTIP plan, urging recommendation on behalf of WCCC for passage by the Washington County Board of Commissioners.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Seconded.
I didn't catch who seconded it.
I said, I second it.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Ken.
Yeah.
Oh, we got some questions. Keith and Steve.
Yeah, so my discussion point is just that I really appreciate the I guess concerns and the points that you raised, Chair. And so so I want to make sure that my yes vote is understood to come forward with the request that I guess the concerns and questions that have been raised would also be answered. You know, that because otherwise the whole conversation is moot. We just could have had, you know, had this presented and frankly could have been considered as part of the consent agenda. So I would like to make sure that the issues raised and the questions raised are included and are addressed as part of our, I guess, a condition of approval.
Thank you, Mayor Callaway, and then we've got Mayor Mays.
Yeah, so when I vote yes, it'll be the assumption that each step of the process, each thing that's generated by the different tax all comes to the WCCC for their review and support or modification and advancement to the full board of commissioners.
Thank you. Terry, I see your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. And I also want to make sure I echo the sentiments of Mayors Callaway and Mays. I think the equity definition truly needs to be defined, and we all need to have a very strong understanding of what that is so that all communities are represented appropriately.
Thank you. Well, we've got a little bit of there's been a motion to approve by Mayor Truax, seconded by Mayor Gibson. And now I've heard comments that would like some amended language. Pete, back to you. Do you have any problem including any of that amended language, which would say it's a yes?
I would accept those suggested amendments to my motion. I enthusiastically would accept those.
Mayor Gibson, how do you feel about that?
I feel exactly the same way as Pete.
So I will try to capsulize those because there were different thoughts, but I think generally it was what we moved that we agree to the MSTIP program contingent upon steps and definitions of the natural environment. What does that definition mean? The equity, what does that mean? And it's more defining, and the metrics that the WCCC has a role in defining the metrics, fleshing out what the natural environment comment is, as well as a role and voice in the equity conversation. Is that Did I miss anything? We probably did, but
No, I think if I could distill that down, I think
Sure.
the intention is to be clear that we intend to cycle back through the WCCC with some of the major decision points as we go through this process. So as we're working on the equity framework, as we're working through the evaluation metrics, and those are mostly articulated, I think, pretty clearly in the text in the work plan. But if we identify locations maybe where there could be some additional clarity, then we'll make the effort to try to make sure that we're clear on those aspects.
all respect, I heard that it was more definitive in that you're going to try to do something. I think that they really want to view it, and they should. I mean, they're partners, they're equal partners.
Mm-hmm.
But they look at each of these items and they are asked for their guidance and definition.
Mm-hmm.
Unless I'm wrong, maybe they don't, but that's clearly what I heard.
I think there's also an expectation that what all the feedback that's been provided today is used to as advice and guidance as that work moves forward. And I didn't really hear that in Mr. Roberts' summary either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and thank you, Mayor. I think that was sort of assumed in my comments, but yes. So point taken on that. So, Commissioner, are you suggesting that perhaps we want to bring back the revised work plan to the WCCC in sort of an email form following the meeting with proposed revisions, or can we encapsulate the comments that we've heard, try to make some amendments to the draft language in the work plan that we're planning to take to the board next week?
Well, that would be my preference, but I've got less than an hour here, so I would defer to my vice chair, Mayor Dalen. What do you think?
I think the questions have been asked. We need to have those answered. They were pretty clear. I think your list was pretty succinct about what they were. Mayor Callaway brought up, the others brought up. So I think there's open questions, and I think the point is we want to have those questions can't be answered in a vacuum. We have to understand the ask and the answer as we move through this process.
Mm-hmm. Right. And again, I think I want to be clear that the work plan is really the roadmap. It's not all of the answers. It's just the process for how we intend to go about working through a series of questions and answers.
And I think that maybe it's the small minutia of that is that when you have these recommendations and they're brought into like that TAC group, the pre-TAC, the technical, we're going to want to review the question and the answer they made, right? Not dissimilar to what the cities do when they deal with a lot of stuff with a planning commission, right? There's an ask and there's answers, and we're going to want to be able to look at both sides of that equation and understand that we have an agreement moving forward. And I think that's really what Roy's trying to get to is it's just not something you put in, not that you'd ever would, but you put it in the beginning of the agenda and go, yep, we're all just going to accept this as part of the motion. So we need to understand the ask and the answer. And there were several questions open. And I see Chris's head. I think she's getting what we're looking for here. So I think everybody is in agreement that we're moving this forward, but it's with those ask and answers open as we go through the process, of which the process is going to help us get a lot of those answers.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well said.
Did that help, Roy?
I think it's perfect, but I do think that to ask this group just to trust. I mean, I would suggest respectfully that we send something out to them, and if they feel they need to call another emergency meeting between now and next month, they can do that, and so that they would see what you're proposing. It's called trust but verify. That's
right. You've heard me say that more than once.
I have.
Okay. Well, so I'm not exactly sure what we do at this point.
I think what you're going to hear us go to a vote on this, and I think you're going to have our support on it in a majority. I think that's what I'm reading from the room, but that you're going to need to, figure out how you're going to document those open questions and the requests for answers as we go through the process. And I think the documentation that these are open questions will probably be enough to help this group move forward. Am I reading the room right?
I think you are, exactly.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, good. That helps reinforce what I thought we were going to do, but that's very helpful.
So as I understand, the motion has been made by Mayor Truax, seconded by Mayor Gibson with amendments that there would be additional information coming back to WCCC regarding the whole metrics question and how you, what does that mean and what role will the WCCC have in development of the evaluation metrics? Because that's clearly said on page 3, not to be them. The natural environment, what does that mean and how do you define that? As well as the equity issues and how does that work in terms of specialized projects, or how does that work in terms of application? And you will send out, hopefully, Stephen, Chris, that map that you have regarding an overlay of what this group has done, because they've done great work. So with that, I think it's about as clear as I can make it. And I would call for the question. All those in favor, raise your right hand and vote accordingly.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Gary, was that an opposition? No, that was just a late yes. Mayor Schroeder, yeah, okay, it's an aye, okay. All right, so there we have it. Lucinda, I need to, once again, here we are, we've placed these giant issues, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 items more after you, and we have some hard times to stop. Tell me what would be best. Do we get a short rendition and hopefully the committee would take it up at their next meeting, or how would you like to proceed?
So either a short rendition, I think we've been doing a lot of short renditions lately, or we can come back at another time and do a more in-depth one. Your choice.
Stephen, I really, of course, I'm going to hear from you in about 3 hours, as you know, at the tolling committee. So myself, and I know Jason will be hearing it, and Steve will be hearing it, and who else? Who did I miss? Oh, Jeff. No, not Jeff. But at least 3 of us. Oh, Pete. Pete will be the other one. Gary, how could I miss Gary? You're fuzzy on my screen, so you look like you're about 22 on my screen. So I think that's a good look. I can't hear you, but that's okay. Listen, do you want to just
going on 23?
I don't think that puts it 23, 22. We'll stay there. I understand Ken showed you a few tricks on the golf course the other day. He was telling me about that. So
Ken always shows me a few tricks.
So Lucinda, could you spend 5 or 10, and then Stephen, would it be appropriate? I'm asking this again, I won't be here, but would it be good that maybe at the next meeting, you can give her some real time so that she's not rushed and 10 minutes and 15, and you won't pack the agenda. So we got all these things that are important.
Right. Yeah, I think that's fine. And I guess the question maybe back to the ODOT team is, of course, there will be the R1 Act tolling work group meeting tonight. So anyone who's interested certainly is welcome and encouraged, I would imagine, to listen in on that meeting. And then to the extent that there were any specific questions or items that Lucinda and her team felt might be important to the WCCC specifically, we could maybe just spend a few minutes there, but then we certainly, I think, and I'm going to look to Chris too, she's my agenda planner. Are we comfortable carving out some time next month?
Yeah, and there's just tons going on right now. I apologize for the squeezed agenda. And the ODOT toll program is a huge one. So if I guess, yes, we can move it back to November. To October. I just want to check with, I know Lucinda and Garrett have a closer feel for deadlines, but when you most need input back. So does that works okay? Or is there any specific question you want to ask the WCC today so they could be thinking about it?
We have the purpose and need. So let me introduce. Good afternoon, Lucinda Broussard, toll program director, and I have with me Garrett Pryor, who's our toll policy manager over in the corner. There's no way we're going to get through our presentation because we have a whole lot of slides. I would say that the thing that's out there right now is the Regional Mobility Pricing Project. We have our purpose and need statement out. It's not due tomorrow. We're looking right now for comments on it. We did put it in a packet, so you do have it. but we're looking for comments back. So nothing that's, we don't have anything burning on the fire. We do have our Equity and Mobility Advisory Committee coming up with the recommendations for the Oregon Transportation Commission in November. We will be sending out those recommendations before they go to the OTC. So you can see those and see what our committee is thinking about as equitable tolling. Other than that, I would say we don't have anything that's burning. We just would like to share what we're doing in our program. So we can come back next time.
Maybe I'll add just quickly. So we will have, for those of you who follow the JPAC or sit on that, we will have a regional transportation plan and an MTIP amendment coming up in the next few months. And that's to better clarify in the regional transportation plan the connection between the I-205 improvements and the I-205 toll project. So we know that's going to come forward, and at the same time, you know, Metro's bringing forward their recommendations from their study. So you'll see two kind of different types of congestion pricing. You'll see Metro's work, which is a very kind of academic, high-level study, and you'll see our work, which is a more like specific project coming to that. So if you have questions about that as that heads forward, we'll we can work through those. But if we come back next month, we can have more info on that.
Garrett, can we get a recording of that point, the statement where you totally called it as it is? The academic high level study and then an actual practical application. We need that like on a sound loop we can play.
I'll put that on TikTok. I'll get it over to you, Jim.
Yeah,
thank you.
We'll do a little dance to it.
Well, I want to thank both Lucinda and Garrett, both of you, for being so gracious. Again, I'll hear it in a few hours. Not everybody here will. And I just think that we've attempted, and I don't blame either Chris or Stephen. They're trying to get a lot of stuff in a very short period, and it's just too big of items to do with it. So they're balancing time, and unfortunately, this one got bumped a little bit. But I think coming back in October, you'll have more time. Hopefully.
Appreciate that. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time.
Yep.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
so much.
Lucinda and Garrett.
Thank you.
Thank you for your patience.
And Mayor Truax has his hand up, Commissioner.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, thank you.
Before they take off, or if they've already taken off, I have a little question on the report on the what they submitted, the project on page 2 under the regional mobility pricing. It talks about where they would take place, and they talk about bottlenecks in the Portland metropolitan area, northbound I-5 from Broadway to Capitol Highway, and southbound from the Rose Quarter, on the Rose Quarter from Broadway to Rosa Parks. Is it just me, or is that backwards?
That's backwards. We're working on the edit.
Okay.
Yep. Well done, though.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great day. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate your time. All right, we're now on item 6. If you're following along, it's a WCC officer elections. As you know, I have been replaced on this particular committee. I was appointed along with Jeff Dalen in February of 2021 to a 2-year term. In July of 21, we changed our bylaws, and during that bylaw change, we made the cycle of election of officers to January 23. So we have a midterm vacancy, and that can be done by either one, having the vice chair move forward to the chair, and then you elect a vice chair. The vice chair could say, I don't want to do any of this. I'd like to do whatever Jeff does in his free time. So we could do that. But that's how you fill a midterm vacancy. One of the things that is changing, both Councilor Sansucci and I will not be at the next meeting. And so I would ask your indulgence to consider one Commissioner Fye as well as Mayor Beatty for appointments should anybody choose to recommend them or nominate them. I talked to Commissioner Fye at some length this morning. She thanks me for being willing to nominate her, but she said, I'm way too new. I've not been on this committee at all. It wouldn't be appropriate. I need time to understand how the committee works. So again, with your indulgence, that would leave Mayor Beatty. Should anyone want to nominate her, should you agree to that? The other item is that it's a little unclear whether those that a change would happen immediately, and I would ask your indulgence as whoever you finally decide that at least be able to get through items 7, 8, and 9 in the agenda today, so we could finish the meeting. Yeah, okay, Jeff, you've been doing that for me forever. But we get through that those, and the appointment would be effective tomorrow. People say, why is that necessary? Because the chair and vice chair hopefully will play a big role in forming the meeting agenda for October. There's a lot of things that happen between these two dates. I mean, and so it's important to have people on board. So with that, I would like to turn to Steve Callaway, Mayor Callaway, who is the mayor of the largest city in Washington County. And Steve, if you wouldn't mind taking nominations, and hopefully you'll take any and all that want to be nominated, and that you will record the vote and who's selected. And two, if you would deal with that little structural issues, or either that or I sine die right after this item. But if you could allow it to be finished today, 3 more items, and we would complete today, and hopefully it would be effective tomorrow morning. So it would be Tuesday, the 14th. Anyway, I'll leave it in your hands.
And if I could, Chair, Mayor Mays has his hand up, and then I just wanted to say I've got a table up on my computer screen that I can share if that's helpful to track nominations and then votes as we move through the process here too.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Keith. I didn't see the hand. I apologize.
I'll wait for Steve to say something, then if Steve can call on me.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor Mays, and thank you, Chair. Thank you, Roy, for all your years of service and leadership as well. And Stephen, if you want to go ahead, then you can either, whatever you're most comfortable with, either putting it up or just maintaining it on the side. With that, with the background that Roy shared, and then with our new bylaws, that sets the stage. And so I'll go ahead and entertain any nominations for the new WCCC chair, which would be effective tomorrow.
Hey, Steve, I'd like to nominate Jeff to be promoted from vice chair to chair of the WCCC.
Okay, so that'd be Mayor Delane moving from vice chair into the chair position. And Stephen, I see your hand up.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I just wanted to say I think that's the normal operation of the bylaws. If Vice Chair Dalen becomes the chair, that's the assumption is that if we have a chair vacancy, he would assume that role for the remainder of the current term through January 2023.
Correct. And then at 2023, we would select, the next chair and vice chair, correct, assuming that the incoming vice chair will then also move into that chair position. Thank you.
That's correct. And so I was just going to say, I'm sorry.
That nomination needs a second. I second.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Shirato. Are there any other nominations?
For chair, Mayor Callaway, or for vice chair?
This would be for chair.
Okay.
All right, seeing none. Stephen, do we need to have somebody make a motion that the nominations be closed, or are we just good to vote with the nomination that's been seconded?
Yep, I think it's fine just to move into a vote at this point. And I was going to say, I think just to reiterate my point, I think as this is the normal operation of the bylaws, I don't think the election is truly necessary, but it certainly doesn't hurt to just have an affirmative action here.
Okay, so then all those who would like to affirm Mayor Delane moving into the chair position through, I guess that would be through the first meeting in January 2023. Go ahead and raise your hand. Very good, thank you. And it looked to me like all hands from voting members were raised. So congratulations or condolences, depending on which way you want to look at it. Mayor Delane, thank you for serving as chair, which then creates a vacancy for our vice chair position. And so are there any nominations for the vice chair position? Mayor Snyder.
I'd like to nominate Mayor Bubenek for vice chair. And I also think we should clarify that we expect Commissioner Rogers to complete this meeting. I know that didn't end up making it in motion or clarification motion, but we'll just remind everybody of that.
Thank you.
I second the nomination for Mayor Bubenek for vice chair and concur with Mayor Snyder's motion also for Chair Rogers to conduct the remainder of this meeting.
Thank you, Mayor Truax. Any other nominations? Mayor Bubenek, this is your chance. Nominate somebody else.
I'm going to stick by Jeff. I'm going to support each other through this.
Okay. All right. Then, Stephen, are we good to close and to vote on this?
I believe you are.
All right, very good. Then, all those in favor of Mayor Bubenek moving into the vacant, soon to be vacant vice chair position, please raise your hand. And it looks that all of the voting members have voted in favor of Mayor Bubenek. So thank you, sir, for serving in this new role, effective tomorrow. And so with that, I will, again, anything else, Stephen, that we need to do for this?
We don't. We'll certainly update our membership roster accordingly, and then we'll want to obviously reach out and touch base with new chair Delin and also with our new vice chair, Mayor Bubenek. So thank you all.
All right, thank you. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Chair Rogers.
Thank you, Steve, for conducting that, and Jeff and Frank. I know you guys will do a great job. If I can be of any help, I feel like the two biggest people I know are in these positions. I mean, we certainly have the size over the region. I think you guys will do great. So thanks so much. The impact agenda, Pete, that's you.
Yeah, thank you. Impact's been on vacation for a while. The last meeting we had was in the middle of July. Coming up in September, there'll be a housing bond update from Metro. There will be an affordable housing discussion, and the housing needs analysis will also be on the agenda. Items on the parking lot coming up for future meetings would include the various transfer stations for garbage disposal around the metro region, the progress on the parks bond, of which we have heard a number of reports to our various councils and reports from the emailed reports from the various councilors. And then in December, a census update. And I think that's fairly important because with the census, there may be, I would think that there might be some changes in boundaries because of shifts in population in the metro area, just as there will probably be changes in boundaries for the various Washington County Commission districts as we move through the census situation. We already have maps out there for House and Senate distribution, as well as for the congressional districts, of which we are adding one here in the state of Oregon. So I think that discussion will continue to be on the front burner for the next 3 to 6 months. Thank you.
Thank you, Pete. Steve, do you want to give the JPAC update?
Will do. Unlike MPAC, JPAC continues to meet. One of the things that we do at the beginning of every JPAC meeting, and some of you may be familiar with this, but we always share the names of those individuals who during the preceding month died either as, pedestrians, motorcyclists, or, people in either drivers or passengers. And it's always a real sobering, thing to start each meeting with that and recognize that, that the work that we do in all of our committees where we focus on safety, just to get those updates. And so I think that's for me, one of those reasons why an update on our regional traffic safety goals is important, an important agenda item for this coming week. Then we also will have our consent agenda, approving the minutes from August 19th. We'll have, resolution for the purpose of accepting the findings and recommendations in the regional congestion study or pricing study. And the issue on that, which you may remember, was how will we accept, the regional congestion pricing study into the RTP? Is it going to be, considered as adopted policy, or is it something that would just be considered as, additional information, but not necessarily the policy for the RTP? And then also an overview by Metro, Clackamas, and Washington counties and Portland on House Bill 3055. Thanks.
Thank you, Steve. Any questions on those two reports? Probably not. They were succinct. All right, then on other business, we have a climate-friendly and equitable community rulemaking update. I bet you that's Chris.
Yeah, it's a quick one. We put a one-pager information sheet in your packet about this. I assume that each of you are each hearing from your staff about the significance of the proposed rules that are the result of the governor's executive order on climate. It's very deep. It's several draft rules are several hundred pages. So I just wanted you to know about this if you hadn't heard about it before. And I think one of the things we will want to do is decide how much of the WCC time, if you would like to have a presentation, or if you feel like you were hearing about this enough from your own staff and do not need a presentation about this at the WCCC. So we can work with our new chairs unless you want to weigh in on this at this time. It looks like Mayor Snyder.
Yeah, I think there's a possibility that depending on, I've gotten some briefing already from our staff. And I guess what I would say is that I'm wondering if there's going to be a need for the entire WCCC to weigh in and provide input and feedback on this as a group. And I guess I would ask our new chair and vice chair to wade through and consider that as an agenda item, not necessarily just to present the content, but to gather input and then consider preparing information for the WCCC to provide input formally as a group.
Okay. We will keep tracking this and looking for a time to bring it back. We'll work with our new chair and vice chair.
Great.
I think the only other thing, Matt Freitag, you had a quick something to bring up.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Just real quick, the next round of Connect Oregon projects, the application process will start on September 15th. So these are awarded by the Oregon Transportation Commission. There's 46 million this year or this time around, and aviation, marine, and rail transportation projects are eligible. Previously, we've had other non-highway modes like bike ped and transit, but those are covered by other programs this time. So a link hasn't gone out yet, but it'll be out there soon. So yeah, it's starting on September 15th, and applications are due October 29th, and then final selection will be made by the OTC next May.
Great, thank you, Matt. Anything else, Chris?
Not on our end, but there may be from other members.
Any other updates? Well, that concludes our our agenda for today. We got done a little early due to the graciousness of Lucinda and Garrett. So I think that's nice. For those of you who are sticking around, it's nice that LUT arranged a little thing afterwards. But if you're unable to, I just want to tell you what a great pleasure it has been to work with all of you. I can truly say it's one of the great things I've been able to do in my lifetime. If you go back about 36 years, none of you were sitting here, and I wouldn't have been looking at you. We wouldn't have had the technology, but we certainly go back, and I can go mayors back on every one of your cities, worked effectively with each and every one of you on projects over the years. So it's been my great honor and pleasure, and I would simply sine die by saying thank you for every memory. Thank you for being such a great group to work with, and hopefully you'll stick around for a couple of minutes if you can. If not, I haven't been committed to any graveyard yet, so I'll be around for a bit, so at least at the county. So thank you all. I appreciate it. We're adjourned.
Okay.
All right, and yeah, so if you're able to stick around with us, we'll just be staying right on this channel, and maybe just give a few minutes for folks that need to drop out, if any, and then we'll get started.
This is going to be a roast, right? That's what I heard. That's what my prepared remarks are for.
I think I can say we did not script this, and so.
Oh, right.
So if that happens to be where the new chair wants to go, sure. Yeah, so I do want to, maybe I'll just go ahead and kick things off. Again, we haven't really scripted this, and so it's everybody's opportunity to try to embarrass Commissioner Rogers, but I did want to just kind of echo my thanks, certainly from the staff perspective, having worked with Commissioner Rogers now for about 13 years here at the county, and just in the last couple of years here, more specifically on the WCCC. I've very much appreciated working with him and his guidance and leadership, not just here in the county, but obviously at the regional level and transportation issues. And I was just thinking a little bit, I know Commissioner Rogers has been in the, I don't know, maybe Commissioner, if you remember, have you been the chair your entire time on the committee, or almost the entire time? So yeah, so about 35 years or so at this point, I think.
Almost 36 probably.
Yep. So you've been around for the formation of all of the MSTIP programs up to this point, and I was thinking back about some other things that are pretty foundational to how we in the county conduct our transportation business these days. So we had the traffic impact fee, which initially started off as a county fee back in, I believe it was 1986, around the time of the first MSTIP levy. And then that became a countywide effort, working through obviously this group in 1990. And then in 2008, this group voted to supersede that with the transportation development tax, which is recouping significantly more of the proportional share of the need for transportation improvements that are generated from development. And so just a lot of really, really important work, and the commissioner could probably help me out with, there may be others too that are certainly noteworthy, but I think things that we tend to take for granted today, those were pretty big moves by this group, and certainly done with the leadership and guidance of Commissioner Rogers, I know.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Michael, I don't know if you can share your screen here. We were getting many of you to sign a poster for Commissioner Rogers, and so here's a photo of it. I will obviously present it to him sometime soon, but we certainly appreciate everyone taking the opportunity to sign that, and we'll certainly make sure to get that to Commissioner Rogers at our next available opportunity. And we intentionally are probably keeping it a little bit small so you can't really read all the details, because, you know, it might have been a few roast comments. I don't know. And so thank you, Michael. And so with that, I don't know, Commissioner, did you want to say a few things to get going before we open it up?
Well, that's kind, and thank you for that poster. That's a wonderful, wonderful tribute. I appreciate it. I was going to write some very steering comments that you all could plagiarize at some meeting in the future, but I said, that's not probably what you want to hear. So I thought I'd simply say, it's been 36 years. It's just short of that of service. I want to take you back and just talk a little bit about what I experienced when I came onto this group. It was in the mid 80s. What had happened is that the cities in the county, like every other city and county in the state of Oregon, and I find her across the country, were in deep battle. You didn't like us much. And I was a mayor in Tualatin, and frankly, I was put up for this position because they didn't like the county at all for many reasons. And I had my election campaign was a mayor of Sherwood, who married Tobias. Keith may remember that name. She passed away several years ago. Tom Bryan, probably don't know him, but he was chairing it. And then the mayor of King City. And they said, we need somebody who is, and her name was Jean Young. We need to have somebody who's going to go over and represent cities. And so what do you say after 36 years when you've, each one of your cities, whether it be Tigard or whether, I'm just looking at, Tualatin, of course, I know those back to when I was there, or Hillsborough, a lot of these people are gone, but they were titans. I mean, they really were great people. I was appointed by Bonnie Hayes. Some of you may have known Bonnie. She was a terrific individual. And she appointed me for a specific purpose. And that was that because of these battles, the county went through a vision statement that we did. We're going to do an update, and I hope it has a couple of the elements that I think were important. And that was that one, that the cities are the highest and best provider of urban services. We said that. That's still there today. We also said that any money that the county receives would be spread equitably from all citizens, across all citizens of the county, rural, urban, and incorporated cities. That was quite a difference because in those days, all of the money that the county had, which really was coming from cities as well, was going into the rural area and the unincorporated area. So we said those things, and we then said, how do we effectuate that and say that we're serious? And Bonnie appointed me and said, Roy, yeah, I got some tough duty for you. You're going to go into this WCCC, and you're going to have to build relationships. You're going to have to make good on our promises. So I can tell you with all sincerity, it was hard work at first. People were distrustful. It was not an easy job. But slowly but surely, we said what we moralized, what I call either a covenant with you or a treaty with you, that we would respect that we were partners. And I've always approached that, and I know people disagree with that, but I've always approached it. You're all equal. And that was such an important issue. And so what became a very hard task became a labor of love. And frankly, and I'm going to tell you this with all sincerity in my heart, it's being with you all was a major reason I ran the last time. It was important to me that this work be carried on. So that's why I really ran. So what have we been able to do? Things that are remarkable together. One, you saw the $900 million, but it's well over $1 billion when you throw in how we coordinated with one another. We worked with one another, well, in the billions of dollars. We developed the first MSTIP proposal. You needed to do that with us. We couldn't have passed the county. We had a name the pothole contest. I mean, it was terrible. The roads were horrible, and the city stepped up and said, we'll support it. It's only through your efforts that we have an MSTIP. It's only through your efforts that we got a TIF. And that, of course, was, as was indicated, that was superseded by the TDT. We did I said to Stephen earlier, I think it was a 2-day, but now I remember it was a day and a half, one full day and a half a day, getting together as a group to establish a county street program. Never been done. It's still never been done in any county. And it was only because you all had faith that it was could be done. So there are many firsts. What you've collectively done has been remarkable. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of what has been done. And I think it's not normal. You take it as normal, but it's not normal. So I want to thank, the past commissions, my commissioners. They had faith in me over the years and said, keep in there, keep up that spirit of trying to work effectively with our cities. I want to thank them. I want to thank people that you may probably not even know in your cities, but your past mayors. They were titans. I was privileged and honored and just grateful to work with them. I want to thank you current mayors. You folks are, you're remarkable people. You represent your communities with distinction and pride. And I couldn't be happier to work with you. It's just been a great experience. And I want to thank our LUT staff. It's not easy for Stephen and Chris to do the kind of work that they do. I think, Stephen, you're my fifth or sixth person that I've worked with in that role. All of you have been intuitive and genius and being willing to do all the work that needs to be done. So I couldn't be more honored. It's been my privilege not only to serve with this group, but with you as well. So what do I hope for the future? I hope, as I listened this weekend in 9/11 and 20 years later, I hope in 20 years, though I have to profess that I may not be here to even see this, I hope that this group is still a group. I still hope that you're together. I suspect many of you won't be in your roles, but I hope 20 years there is a WCCC. I hope the county respects the value of our partnership. I've never called you a committee, other than that's what the name is, but I've always said that we're partners, and I hope that the county respects that and doesn't try to minimize your role, because they don't have a program without you. They couldn't have gotten one without you. I hope that the large cities respect the small cities and don't try to minimize their roles. Whether you're from down my neck of the woods, whether you're from Durham, or whether you're from Tigard or Tualatin, which are bigger, I hope that they always respect that those cities have a voice. You have one vote. Everybody has one vote. It's like the U.S. Senate on so two, we got one. So I hope that the large cities respect that, and I hope the small cities recognize and continue to recognize the needs of the larger cities, because they have needs, and you can't be myopic and say, well, I don't understand and respect that. So I hope it happens. And I hope that you really understand how powerful you are in speaking with one voice in the region and the state and the federal level. My remembrances of going to DC and I never led the delegation. I simply was maybe introducing it, but we had with Jeff, you always had Pete. There were a lot of times wonderful comments that you all had with experiences. And I'm going to miss that. That was so great. So I'll stop. You gave me more time than I deserve and should take, but I am so honored to work with all of you. It's really one of the highlights of my political career. And so I'll move off knowing that you all are a lot smarter, brighter, and faster than I am. And just carry on the good work and don't ever believe you're less than you are. You're powerful together, and I hope you remain that way. So thank you, Stephen, for allowing me to say a couple of things from my heart.
Yeah, no, of course, and we appreciate you staying on to do this too. So kind of an important occasion, I think. So and so I guess with that, we can just open the floor if there are folks that would like to say something. Maybe if you raise your hand, and then we'll try to see if we can catch people in a semblance of order. And then I know we have a few folks in our attendees as well, and so I think if there were folks there that are potentially interested in being able to say something, if you want to raise your hands as well, and then we'll see if we can work a few in if we have time there as well. And so I saw Mayor Snyder, and I believe, yeah, Mayor Snyder. Okay. Whoa, we got a whole bunch here. So maybe I'll just go in the order you're on my screen. I saw Mayor Snyder first.
So Commissioner Rogers, thank you for your time with the WCCC. And it's interesting, I had already prepared what I was going to say, and some of it had to do with your being a tireless advocate for cities. And I think that's really recognized. I didn't know the history entirely of that until you just shared it as to why that may be. But it didn't go unnoticed. And I expect that you'll continue to do that in your role as a commissioner, but it really showed in the transportation work. And, your kind of known around the region as Mr. Transportation, and there's a reason for that. If someone wants to know the history of a project or why something's the way it is, or how this works or that works, or what happened in 1996, you're the person to go to. And the fact that you've been doing this since since I was a fifth grader, just on the WCCC, and I'm now middle-aged or old, according to many people. I guess I think about how long you've spent time dedicated to this, and I just appreciate it. And I think everyone in our region is better for it. So thank you.
Thank you, Jason. That's very kind of you.
And I think I see Mayor Callaway might have been next. Oh, I think you're muted, Mayor.
All right, thank you. Roy, the nice thing about speaking second is that I'm not repeating everything everybody else has said, because I think you'll hear very common themes from all of us. But one thing which has always stuck out to me is your comment, which I've heard you make, and that is, we as a county, we didn't get here by accident. And it is not accidental that we are in just the strong position that we are, that we have the strong relationships that we do, that we have, the strong respect amongst WCCC, albeit times that we are irreverent, with each other. None of that is by accident. And that all goes back to your leadership. And so thank you very much for your purposeful, deliberate, thoughtful, strategic leadership. We know that you haven't accomplished it all by yourself, as you have mentioned. You've had great mayors and great commissioners, and especially great county staff to work with. But it is our responsibility now to make sure that as we move forward, that there are no accidents, that we continue to, move forward with the ethics, and the integrity with which you have operated and led. And we expect that if we don't, you'll be picking up the phone to tell us to fix it and to get it right. So thank you for your partnership and your friendship.
Oh, thank you, Steve. That's so nice. Thank you.
Lost my mute button. And Mayor Truax, I think, next.
Thank you very much, Steve and Commissioner. I think the first or second meeting of WCCC after I was appointed mayor, there was a conversation about streets and roads, obviously, in Washington County. And Roy Rogers Road came up in the conversation. And I was feeling a little frisky that day. And I said, Roy, we can only name so many roads after you. And there was a bit of laughter in that. And I said, I hope I haven't overstepped anything. And apparently I haven't, because I remember the various trips back to Washington, D.C. with JPAC, and how you sort of guided me through some of those conversations, making sure that I was included in the conversations with the representatives and the senators and their staff. So there was so that I truly felt part of the team. You did that with every mayor that made the trip with you back to Washington, D.C., whether it was a small city, a large city, or a wide spot in the side of the road. You made those people feel important because they were important, and they are important. And they're important because of people like you. Thanks again.
Thank you, Pete. That's very nice remarks. And I'm going to miss your ribbing. You ribbed me a lot, and I deserve it, and I appreciate it, and all your leadership there as well.
Yeah, you probably have a few bruises in the ribs, don't you?
A little bit.
A little bit. All right. And then Mayor Mays, I think you were next.
Thanks, Steve. Roy, I was just thinking back when I first got elected 20 years ago. Incoming Mayor Cottle, who had been serving on the WCCC, said, Keith, you need to start going to these meetings. And I go, what meetings are that? He goes, just show up, listen to Roy, and don't screw it up. And if you have questions, ask Roy. And that's literally all I knew at the beginning. But there was a lot of truth to that, because at that point you'd been doing this for 16 years and you helped bring the county and all the cities together on transportation and this unique thing that we have. And it has been a sincere pleasure working with you for most of the last 20 years. I had a little bit of a gap in there, but to see what we've been able to accomplish together is really remarkable. And we're the envy in the state of Oregon when it comes to transportation. And you played a big role in help bringing us together. As some say, before I was out of school, and have continued to keep us on track, work together, realize that we all have different needs, but a shared goal in how to use these dollars that come from our communities in a responsible, thoughtful way, to be able to support our families and businesses the way that we have, that other counties have not been able to figure out to do. So you have many, many, many friends and those that appreciate and honor you for what you've done for our county, for our cities, for our families and businesses. And cannot thank you enough for your tireless, selfless efforts as part of leading this ragtag group of city officials the last 36 years. So thank you, Roy.
Thank you, Keith. That's nice of you.
Thank you. And Jeff, I see you're there next, but I think I'm going to cycle through our elected officials first, if that's all right. So Mayor Linehan.
Thank you, Stephen. I appreciate that. Roy, when I came on as an elected 13 years ago, I had no clue about WCCC at all. And I remember my predecessor saying, again, you've got to get dialed into what's going on in Washington County and the transportation issues and all of the above. And without him pushing me in that direction, I would not have met you. Another way that I did meet you was through our auditing budgeting cycle. And your company was also a part of North Plains audit process. And so it's another way that I got to know your organization. But more importantly, I think just sitting here on this with this ragtag group, as Mayor Mays called us, which I love, your leadership, your steady, calm approach to the issues that we all face has just been, I mean, it's phenomenal. You have a great disposition about you, and I really appreciate that you champion for not just the larger cities, but even those smaller cities, Banks, North Plains, Durham. And I just really, I'm going to miss you. Obviously this is not bye. You're going to be around, and I suspect that if we have questions or concerns, or we need a little bit more information or history, we're going to pick up the phone and call you. And so I would just certainly expect calls from all of your friends here on this call. But thanks again for your steady hand, your calm nature, and your leadership. I greatly appreciate, and I'm glad that I got to meet you.
Jerry, thank you. That's very kind.
Great. Mayor Gibson.
Okay, let's see. Roy, well, you mentioned the height of these two new leaders that are coming in, Jeff and Frank. But as far as I'm concerned, your stature is probably right there with him. You have just stood up for all of us. You've made me understand how important it is to be partners. And that's the way you've presented yourself to me and to King City and to the rest of us. We know how important it is for us all to work together, and you have been the glue that held all that together. And I truly appreciate it. You have always come to me to give me a heads up on things that are coming our way, whether you had to or not. but it just always left me feeling that you appreciate your role and how you support us as mayors. And my job wouldn't be as good as it's been without you. So I appreciate you, and I thank you for all of your years of experience and support to all of us as mayors, and especially me. So thank you, Roy.
You can.
And forthcoming chair, Delin.
Oh, this is going to be tough.
Well, as a young high school driver in 1986, I remember the Washington County roads were a joke in the Tri-County area. I remember avoiding potholes in front of St. Mary's on Murray at the intersection of Murray and DV Highway that you could lose a wheel into. That's how bad it was when Roy came into this auspicious area. I would say that I've only had I've been elected now for 18 years, and very soon after being elected, I won the opportunity from the mayor to be appointed to go represent our city at Washington County Coordinating Committee, and started working with Roy at that point. So that's why Roy and I have so many memories together. We've been working together for almost 20 years, at least 18. And, we've been through some interesting workshops and work groups. And well, I remember you talking about the streets of significance and the meetings we had on those, and rolling out big maps on the table and looking at what they were, and, things like that. So I just want to thank you. You know what? None of us have, because they didn't record those meetings on Super 8 with a handheld cassette recorder when Roy first started them. I gotta wonder, was there some knocking heads? Was Roy in there really just, because you see him in such a calm and cool and even tempered demeanor now. And, I don't think I wasn't as calm and cool now as I was, now. I wasn't like this 20 years ago. So I'm trying to think of Roy as this firebrand, 36 years ago, trying to pull that original ragtag of people together that, didn't want to talk to each other, and South County hated West County, and on it went. I can only imagine what those must be, and how fortunate I am to inherit a group that does handle each other with professional dignity and respect. And that I see that my job going forward is to make sure this group continues to pull together and not apart, because that is the hallmark that I had the opportunity to jump into, is this group that was just, even if they didn't always agree, they argued to come an agreement on what they could, and then they worked and pulled their hardest in that direction. And I remember that the discussions around the TIF to TDT, there were some warm afternoon meetings there, trying to get to the measures. Yeah, Keith remembers some of those. I think you're around when we did that conversion, when your last time through this chair position, so as mayor. So I can only hope to be as calming and cooling effect, and as well at communicating out. I think what Ken said about you knowing the times to reach out to people, right? You're seeing something going on at the county. That's the part that's going to be hard for Frank and I, right? Is because we just aren't as dialed in. I think we're still going to depend on the county staff or the county commissioners to reach out to us on, hey, and that's something we've always enjoyed, is even in our, meetings with the chairs, the years that we've had meetings with the chairs, you were always somebody that made sure we got the right information. So I couldn't pass one more opportunity, though, to say it's been great to work with you, Papa Smurf. And I'm really, really going to miss giving you a hard time in front of all these people, especially now that we're on the internet and it's so widely publicized, and that now no one will be able to look at you without thinking about Papa Smurf, especially since you chose such a good shirt for today.
Oh, thanks.
I will really miss this time with you, Roy. And I will, as we discussed, we will be having one-on-ones, because we will miss this time normally together. Thank you for all you've done.
Well, thank you, Jeff. Anything I can do to help, I mean, you're gonna take it well beyond where I ever went, but I stood on the shoulders of former mayors, and I'm pleased that mayors are taking this over. It's great. I'm delighted.
All right, and I see Mayor Shrotto, I think, is next.
Roy, I think everybody so far has told you what's in our hearts and heads with regard to our feelings of admiration, respect, and affiliation with you for the years of your dedication and devotion to first Tualatin and to the county. But I wanted to specifically let you know that I have personally appreciated your sentiment expressed a couple times. You probably never thought that I noticed about your feelings for Durham. And I want you to know that I've appreciated all those little sidebars that you said about our beautiful little city here. They haven't gone unnoticed nor unappreciated. And I look forward at least to being able to spend time with you, if not in the car going to the Act One meetings now anymore, but at least together as we will be this evening at Act, and look forward to being able to get back and having that in-time personal space together. So thank you again, Roy, both for myself personally and for the city of Durham and what you've done also for Washington County. And I want to also make mention, I'm not sure if it was Mayor Callaway who brought this up, but I think all of us in this group know, acknowledge, and appreciate one another more than any other group of mayors that I have been in contact with in the state of Oregon. And I think we've all contributed, our predecessors have contributed, and you have been a significant contributor building that rapport and that feeling that we have in Washington County for one another. And that alone, I think, deserves all of our respect and admiration. So thank you, Mr. Commissioner. I appreciate you, and I appreciate what you've done for Washington County.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Gary, you and I will get many more times. I'm still on ODOT for a while, and so we'll have those trips. And I appreciated your always standing up mightily for your city. You've done a great job, as the other mayors have done too. But I've always enjoyed it. We'll have more time.
All right, and Mayor Bubenik.
Well, Roy, thank you for your years of service, both to the county and to the city of Tualatin. Back when I was a wee counselor, you were well known to be along with Mayor Ogden, the dynamic duo of taking care of this part of the county. You're both long timers, and you transformed the road systems in and around this side of the county, which is much appreciated. When I did my transition breakfast with Mayor Ogden, he, like other people have mentioned, he sang your praises and said, you know, I had to meet you, I had to get better knowledge about you and work with you to the betterment of Tualatin in the years to come. And I don't know if you remember, you, I, and your wife met at a Hops game.
Yeah,
and host a game, and that's the first time you and I really chatted, and we learned a lot about each other that day. And I very much appreciate you taking the time to chat with me, and I've enjoyed the 3 years working with you. And I know in your heart of hearts you still take care of Tualatin and have a special eye for it. So I'll be always open to hearing your insight about what's going on in this city, and looking for your opinion and your anything you can do to help me out with the city and help Jeff and I with some of that insider knowledge, like you mentioned. I think when we had our last lunch about that road project that no one ever heard of, but that you knew about. Was it Southwest 87th, the service road that I had to dust off and ask staff about? So all that history is in your head. So I have no qualms on tapping that information when I need it. So thank you very much for everything you've done for helping me come up to speed as a mayor, and for what you've done for Tualatin and the county.
Thank you, Frank. That's very gracious of you. And I look forward to working with you. That 87 is a great project. You need to look at that.
I actually am. Charlene's scratching her head too.
Good, good. It's a good one.
That was one, yeah. That was one none of us here at the county remembered either. So that's good. So I think we've been through our most of our elected officials. Councilor Rosenthal, I didn't know if you wanted to say anything, or I know we have a couple TriMet staff folks, and I might let them arm wrestle over who wants to go first. Go ahead, Councilor Rosenthal.
Yeah, I just say a brief word. I haven't had too much opportunity to work with Commissioner Rogers. We had some nice conversations and chats, and I appreciate his long-standing dedication to the county, and particularly, as many of you have testified, to bringing the cities together and creating a sort of a sense of we're all in it together and we're all working together to try and resolve regional transportation issues. I think that's been very important, and I'm sorry that he's not going to be, on WCCC. And at any rate, appreciate having gotten to know him, at least to some extent. Wish I'd had more opportunity to work with him.
Well, that's kind, Jared. Thank you.
All right, yeah, TriMet folks, you want to?
Yeah, I'll be very brief and hand it over to Tom, but thank you, Commissioner Rogers, for just so many years of service and leadership. Folks at TriMet and all around the region are just very appreciative of all of your service. So I'll just pass the mic over to Tom, but thank you so much.
Commissioner, the terrifying thing for me looking at all these people on the Zoom call is that I think I have worked with you longer than any of them.
I think that's true.
And which means I am getting so old.
Oh.
I started working with you when I was in Congress, working for a congressman, and my job was to manage all these JPAC people. I was the designated congressional herder for everybody, and that's when I first got to know you, and what a pleasure that was. I will never forget discovering what a regionalist you were. And you and I were on the mall, and we were walking to some office, and you talked to me about what's good for Gresham is good for Tualatin, and what's good for Hillsborough is good for Oregon City. You wanted everybody to succeed, and that was really evident. And when I worked for TriMet and started putting those trips together, it was still clear you were there supporting the region. It wasn't just Washington County, it was everybody. And that made a difference. You were real elder statesmen. When we were trying to put together the deal with Southwest Corridor, and we would get into a jam, we would turn to you and your elected leadership and other elected leaders. And you didn't know this, but we called you guys Roy's Rangers. And we called you Roy's Rangers because you always came to the rescue. And you helped us all see clearer and work together a lot better. You were a friend of transit. And I sure am proud that you are a friend of mine and a friend of TriMet's. Thank you, sir.
Tom, I thank you. Those are really, really nice remarks. And I remember all those days working with Earl and everyone else. And what's a little tough for me is I'm looking at a man who's a little older than I used to remember him in Earl's office a few years back. You've aged just slightly, maybe not as much as me, but just slightly.
I need hair dye, Commissioner.
I would have to buy it by the barrel, and I'd look pretty funny. I don't have enough hair to put it in anymore.
Right.
Tom, thanks for all the years. Yeah.
And so we're just about out of time, and I know Chris would like to say a quick something, but I'd like to, if I could, before we lose anyone, can we take a couple of screenshots? I think Michael is queued up and ready to go, so maybe we can do, yeah, maybe a thumbs up or something. And
thank you all.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Great. Thank you, everyone, for sticking around. And then, Chris, did you want to say a little something?
Just quickly, Commissioner Rogers, as staff to Washington County Coordinating Committee, I just want to add my thanks to Stephen about how great it's been to work with you. And I also wanted to share the perspective that not everyone may have about how successful, how important it is to have that coordinated county city vote at the regional tables, and how important that is. I know we do bury a lot of regional topics on our agenda, statewide, regional, but it is important. They're important to the county, and the voice of Washington County Coordinating Committee it just has a really important role on state issues and regional issues. And I really personally want to thank you for having steered and created this committee. And to the rest of you, look forward to continuing this strong city-county partnership, which is so important.
Thank you, Chris. It's been a pleasure working with you. It really has.
Oops. My apologies. I lost you guys under another window. So without any parting comments or anything else to say, I appreciate everyone sticking around. We certainly thank you for giving us the extra 30 minutes today and taking a few moments to recognize Commissioner Rogers on the WCCC.
Thank you, Roy.
Thank all of you.
Thank you, Roy.
Thank you.
Thanks, Roy.
I look forward to getting together for some drinks.
You bet. Anytime, Keith.
Thanks.
Oh,
Bye.
sounds like our one-on-ones at Keith and he's buying.
Wow.
Keith, I think you're gonna have to do that on Mondays at noon instead of WCCC, because Roy has an opening.
Yeah, I do.
I know where he works. Awesome. Great job.
Well, thank you, everyone.
Thank you all for your nice
Thank you, Roy.
comments. I appreciate it.